Hello, 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 everyone. I think we are officially live. So, for those that have joined us, thank you so much for joining us. As promised, we are bringing you a virtual sellers chat. Let's get it sold, sellers. Where's Miss Cass? I'm glad you asked. I'm your girl, Miss Cass, principal broker of the Aspire Group, powered by Exit Strategy Realty, your neighborhood realtor, investor, and educator, connecting you to the community through real estate. I'm so happy that we have two of my partners here. We have Mrs. Krissy Savage, interior designer from Krissy Savage Moments, who's going to be sharing with us some tips and some tools that sellers can do in order to get their property sold, some simple things and some simple strategies just to make that home and the surrounding more appealing. And we also have none other than Kelvin, lender, brother, friend, Loan Depot. He's going to be walking us through some things that sellers might want to be mindful of as they enter the market, and really helping to dispel myths around FHA versus conventional and other lending myths, and a little bit more education. And let's jump right into it, you all. How's everybody doing? Good evening. Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Good evening.
Kelvin, Krissy, good evening.
Yes, good evening.
Okay, perfect. I just want to make sure you all could hear me.
Yes.
So really quickly, why is it important to have this? And I'll just let us each kind of talk a little bit about really introduction, who we are. Why is it important that we're having this today? And what's one thing that we hope the viewer will take away? Krissy, I'll let you go first.
Thank you. So I would say the main reason why we're doing this is because it is 100% time to stage your home, put your house on the market. The weather is getting ready to change. Miss Cass is already going to handle that if you need her to. But the weather is most definitely getting ready to change, and your house should be staged to sell. The goal is to sell it as fast as you possibly can for the most amount of money that you possibly can get. So with those two goals in hand, this is the perfect time to put your house on the market. I'm going to go through just a few things that you will want to do. You want me to go through that now? All right, perfect.
No, you can hold off. You can hold off.
Okay.
Yeah, but thank you for that intro. Kelvin, I'll ask you the same question. Why is now the time for sellers to put their home on the market? And then we'll dive a little bit more into those topics.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. My name is Kelvin Waits, of course. I'm with Loan Depot. Been doing this for 24 years now. And now is a really good time to purchase. We've been having, to put your home on the market. We've been having really great weather. So that's helped us out quite a bit. But the main thing is we want to make sure that we are pricing your home correctly. And we want to also talk with you about some ways that will make your home more attractive to a larger buyer pool, if you will. So that's the key, is being able to get your house in front of as many people as you can. And then I'm quite sure that Kristen will let you know how your home should be looking and those types of things as we move further along. But I will talk with you about how to make your house more attractive to a larger pool of buyers.
I love it. I love it. So look, we're jumping right in, you all. This is a very informal chat, so feel free to engage with us. Ask questions, feel free to comment. One of the biggest things that I wanted to come and talk about is really what's going on in the market. And honestly, I will say that we are officially in spring as it relates to sales. We have hit the spring market. I really felt like we jumped straight from the holiday, New Year's Eve. After that, it was go time. We've seen properties on the market, and my experience has been that I've seen properties that have already been multiple offers, extremely competitive in certain communities. And that's really what I want to talk about today, sellers. One of the biggest things that I'm seeing is a misconception of when a seller should put their property on the market. And so it's extremely important that I share with you what's going on today in the market. Right now, again, depending on the areas and the communities, one of the things that I am seeing is buyers are absolutely buying right now. There was a little bit of a slow up because of the rates, but buyers are back on the market. And when I tell you they are back on the market in full force, and in some communities, it's extremely competitive. I'll give an example. I was looking in one of the south suburbs with one of my clients, and we put in a couple of offers, and these were pretty decent offers, and we were still up against multiple buyers. I mean, people were putting down, we're starting to see that earnest money going up. You know, a lot of times people don't really want to put down a lot of money in terms of earnest money, but we're starting to see buyers be a little bit more competitive, especially in some of those more competitive communities. People are putting down more earnest money. They are actually putting down over asking in a lot of communities, and buyers are getting creative. Sellers, buyers are actually getting going through the underwriting process in a lot of instances because they want to close sooner. They use that as an attractive tool to get in front of you. So we know that most sellers want to close very quickly. So buyers also understand that they have to be a little bit more creative. And so some of them are going through the process of going through the underwritten process before or early on, I would say, to eliminate some extra time on the back end. What else am I seeing? What else should sellers think about? One of the things that I see it's a common thing. It continues to happen, and it really comes with, we have to make sure that you sellers are fully educated on how to properly attach the value and the price to your property. One of the things that it's our job to do as a realtor is to go in, make sure that we evaluate your property, we assess how many bedrooms and baths, but we also do a comparative market analysis to make sure that the listing price is comparable to listing prices in your community, in your immediate community. And so what does that mean? If there are other properties that match your square footage that are similar to yours in terms of bedrooms and baths, we're going to use those as additional comparisons when we provide to you a comparative market analysis. Understand that we know how important these homes are to you as you're selling them, and we understand that the memories that you have in these properties are extremely special, but we are not able to attach value to a memory. We have to make sure that we're sticking to the numbers, what's going on within that specific community, and what makes sense. Because the issue that we have when we try to, if we misquote your price, or if we put a price that's not comparable to your community, that property is going to sit on the market. And the more that property sits on the market, the more susceptible that property is to being vandalized, having somebody come in and squat. I mean, these are all things that we have to think about. I mean, yesterday it was 70 degrees outside. Today it was 37. So you have to also worry about the mechanicals in the building, in the home, right? So you don't want to have these homes sitting too long. That's why we do our best and we do our due diligence to make sure that we price those properties adequately. So understand that your realtor partner is there to make sure that you price that home appropriately so that that home is attractive to buyers that are in that area, because buyers are very savvy. Buyers and their agents are extremely savvy. They are already doing comparative market analysis to make sure that that home is not overpriced based on what's going on in that particular community. So I would say absolutely making sure that the pricing strategy is accurate, trusting your realtor partner to do their due diligence, not attaching emotion to that transaction, and really just being factual about your pricing is going to be extremely important as you enter this spring market, because as I said, sellers are extremely savvy. And I would say just in terms of, and we could talk about this a little bit more, but I want to talk a little bit to Kristen about what can be done when it comes to pricing, right? What are some things that you can do to get that property ready? I usually go in very similar to Kristen sometimes and talk a little bit about what needs to be done on the property to make sure that there are certain steps that you take as a seller to get that property ready. But I really want Kristen to use her expertise and talk a little bit about what she does when she goes into a property with the seller. Kristen?
Thank you. So I am Kristen. I am an interior designer here in Chicago, Illinois, and I mostly work in Northwest Indiana. I am a stager. Thank you. So a few things. This is all D's: decorate, declutter, depersonalize. So what does that mean? We can decorate to our liking, to whatever we feel like, but we want to make sure that these have like neutral color bases. For instance, I am in a black basement. This is not going to appeal to too many buyers, especially women, unless they see that, oh, she did this, she did that. So you have to make sure that you are appealing to everyone. So you want to neutralize what you have. Unfortunately, if I decide to put this house on the market, this black basement will no longer be black. And that is because that's 100% because the goal is to appeal to everybody. I want everyone or whoever the right person is for this house to come in and see their self in the home. So that leads to the next step, which is you have to depersonalize your home. If I see a picture of you, I can't picture myself in your home.
Mm-hmm.
So the goal is always to make sure your photos, your toothbrushes, toothpaste, all of those things that say, I live here. These are my memories. Unfortunately, they have to leave. And that is because the goal is for someone to see their self in your space. In order for them to see that or visualize, hey, I want to live here. Was there a trigger? Was there a smell? Was there a sight? We're such emotional individuals. And so we like to, what's the word I want to say? We see ourselves, we visualize ourselves in that space, in the moment. Am I going to be able to raise my kids here? Will I be able to walk my dog? So on and so forth, right? So again, you can decorate to your heart's content, but make sure that it is neutral. You want to be personalized. Photos of Grammy, me, you, all of our family, it's not going to work. And then lastly, it's going to be to declutter. You have to declutter, and cleaning is a huge step. We can't just, let me say this. Prime example, I was staging a home and I went into a closet and everything fell out of the closet. If I was a potential buyer going into that home, one, I'm thinking all of the following. You don't have enough storage. That alone is going to deter potential buyers because they're like, oh, if you don't have enough storage for the things that you currently have, why are you moving? Are you moving to a bigger home? Regardless if it's a starter home or not, that's the first thing that comes into anybody's mind. You don't have enough storage. So declutter, make sure that you're cleaning. And you're like, I don't feel like cleaning my house. You can go on Facebook, renovation room or something like that. Somebody does a special, it's $100. They come in, they clean your house for 4 hours, and you're like, I can't do that. Well, unfortunately, we have to clean it. It has to be clean. You have to neutralize the smells. If you have animals, we love our dogs. We love our cats. We love all of animals, okay? Mm-hmm. But as a potential buyer, I don't want to smell or see your animal. Right. So that goes into declutter. You got to make sure that it is fully clean. Cass can also talk about when you're first walking in. I said this before, like there's triggers. Coffee and boiling cinnamon. That's what I do with my clients right before they put their house on the market. Why do I boil the cinnamon? Because it makes it smell like oatmeal or cookies. And so it triggers, that's connecting to one of our senses, like, oh, I can see myself cooking in this kitchen. I could do this. And then lastly, this is more like a bonus. You want to highlight whatever your home's factor is. So if it's your kitchen, when you can do this with your realtor. It really depends on how you and Cash set this up. But you want to highlight the area, that space that says by me. Turn the light on, have a candle, make sure like the lamp is on in that area. If it's the closet, turn everything on, open the doors. Again, make sure it's decluttered. You don't want someone to trip over your shoes as they're trying to walk through. But again, so to recap, declutter, depersonalize, make sure it's clean, and yes, you can decorate to your heart's content. Just make sure it's neutral.
I love it. I love it. I agree 150%. Usually one of the things that I tell sellers is when we are having these open houses or when we're having tours, it poses a challenge a lot of times, sellers, if you are in the home, but if you can minimize what you have in the home. We know that you might still live in this home, so we understand that, to her point, you have to brush your teeth, right? Make sure that you store your toothbrush somewhere. We know that you might cook. Be mindful of smells and everything. And then the other thing that I would say is make sure that the blinds are open. Right now we're going more into sunlight, but we came out of a season where, traditionally during this time of year, it's a little bit grayer. So it helps to just have those blinds open and to light that space up, right? Turn on every single light so that you can accentuate the home. So absolutely wonderful tips. I love when you talk about those. That is your passion. As we go into a little bit more of what sellers can expect from a buyer's perspective, I'm excited to hear Kelvin talk a little bit about what are you seeing in the market, because you are the lender who is going to be presenting this pre-approval to the buyer. So you're on the opposite end. But again, I feel like it's important that you're here to talk to sellers about some things that they can do to help get those homes prepped, because you're the person that's going to help take that loan through and present it to underwriting. So can you talk a little bit about, from a seller's perspective, what are some things that sellers can do to help prepare their homes? And then also talk a little bit about the loans and what some of the loan specific requirements might be that sellers might not understand.
Sure. Thanks again for the introduction. And what I will say is too, just to piggyback on what you were saying about opening the windows up, all last week, I think I might have mentioned to you, I was doing spring cleaning.
Yes.
And I cleaned both the the inside and the outside of all of my interior windows. And I can tell you, it made a huge difference. My wife came down, I had the blinds open, and she was like, this looks like a whole nother house.
Whole different house.
So, I mean, it really makes a difference. You really have to go out and make sure. Well, thank goodness our home is newer, so the windows swing in. So I didn't really have to go outside to do them. But, make sure you do both sides of the windows, clean those blinds, and it will make a huge difference.
Yes.
And the impact that the light makes is amazing.
Absolutely.
So I just wanted to say that, I'm not an interior person, but I did those windows and it was amazing.
But you are a recent buyer. And I think it's important that you talk about that as a recent buyer, because is this your second year?
This is my second year now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So exactly what buyers are looking for, being a recent buyer. So that's extremely important. Thank you for sharing that little tip, new buyer.
Oh, no problem. No problem. That's all I got on the interior decorating part now.
I'm pretty sure you have more than that.
Absolutely. So look, let's shift gears and talk a little bit more about what you're seeing from a lending perspective, and what should sellers be prepared for during this season?
Okay. Well, I can piggyback right on what Kristen was talking about as far as preparing the property. I would say that, what we really want to look at is, for the large portion of our community, we're looking at FHA loans. FHA tends to be the lender of choice for a lot of the communities that we serve. And so with that being the case, we want to make sure that our homes are adequately prepared for an FHA appraisal. Typically, FHA is going to look for mostly, health and safety issues. So one of the biggest health and safety issues is lead-based paint. So that if you have a home that was built prior to 1978, there's a chance that you have lead-based paint. Now, what that means is that you can't have any paint that is peeling, chipping, loose, and it's a very easy process to fix. If you have loose paint, all you need to do is scrape and paint. You don't have to get anyone out to do a lead abatement or anything like that. You just need to make sure that there's no paint hanging off the walls or ceilings, and that goes for interior as well as exterior. Typically, where I find the lead-based paint, well, not lead-based paint, where I find the chipping paint is around old window sills, around door trim. And what happens is the loan will not get denied for that, but it will get called out by the appraisal and it will have to be corrected before we can actually close and get a final approval on the loan.
Yeah.
So other things that you will probably may overlook that's very important when you're dealing with a home inspection or dealing with an appraisal is, I'm going to name out a few things that I see all the time. Torn window screens, in the upper floors especially. Yep. It's a safety issue because a child can fall out of that, open screen, and so the screens would have to be replaced before you were able to close on that loan. Another thing, some of you all have security doors and windows. Those doors must have windows must have a quick release because a fire department person would need to be able to have easy access to that property. And not only that, you need to be able to get out if there was a fire. So those are things that will create a problem. So screens, paint, broken windows, doorknobs that are missing, and here's another big one: handrails. Make sure all the handrails are tight. So if you got handrails going down into the basement and they're loose, they need to be tightened up. If they're not there, it's easy to just go to Home Depot and pick up a handrail and install it going into the basement or whatever, because the handrails must be there on an FHA loan.
Okay.
Another thing is,
Kelvin, really quickly, can I interject? You talked a little bit. I don't want to lose what you said earlier. If you can go back, you said majority of the buyers are going to be FHA. I know you're talking about some things that FHA requires. Can you talk a little bit about why that is the case in terms of most of our buyers that are coming to the market being FHA buyers, so sellers can understand that a little bit better?
Absolutely. The bulk of the buyers are coming in FHA for a number of reasons. Number one, lately, to be honest with you, FHA rates have been better. On my side, my FHA rates have been better than conventional rates, which means a lower payment. Also, FHA reduced the mortgage insurance, the mortgage insurance factor. So now mortgage insurance is comparable or lower in a lot of cases than conventional loans. So number one is the price. Number two is easier access to credit, meaning lower credit scores are allowed. You don't need as much down payment in a lot of cases. So those are some of the reasons why people typically may choose an FHA loan versus a conventional loan. You don't need the buyer doesn't need to have as much credit. Some conventional loans, they want you to have 4 lines of credit and they've been opened up for a certain amount of time, or you don't get approved. But just to be perfectly honest, FHA loan is a lot easier to qualify for.
And can you also talk about, and you could tell me if I'm going too deep, about how the debt to income ratio might also be a factor, because that's what I've noticed in a lot of clients. The debt to income ratio is a little bit higher for my FHA buyers, just because unfortunately with the way that a lot of our finances are, our rent, which is now becoming our mortgage, takes a huge chunk of our income. Can you talk about the debt to income ratio and how that might also play a factor in conventional versus FHA?
Absolutely. Well, with FHA, just like you mentioned, is that they do tend to allow a larger debt to income ratio. I've had people approved all the way up to 58%, meaning 58% of their income was basically the home and all of their payments took up 58% of their income, but I was still able to get them approved. That probably would not be the case with a conventional loan. So it does allow for a larger debt to income ratio. It allows for you not to have a lot of money in reserve for a rainy day. So FHA is definitely better in that way. And because of the higher debt to income ratio, it allows you to afford more home. So if you're going conventional, chances are you may have to afford less home than you would if you were going FHA.
I'm going to take that one step further because I know a lot of us are prior students. And I know that for a lot of people, student loans have caused them to be ineligible to be pre-approved. But there was a recent change over the last couple of years that have helped more buyers. Just so sellers know, there are more buyers that have entered the market because of the reduction in the percentage that is. Let me not take your role. So talk to us a little bit about
No, you're doing a great job, and I appreciate the segue in. I really do.
I was going to ask you too.
Yeah, but no, it is. It has become more affordable because they have relaxed some of the guidelines as it relates to student loans. With FHA, typically what happens is that let's just say that you're showing zero balances on your credit report for your payments. If we don't have any other documentation, we can use 0.5% of whatever your outstanding loan balances are. So let's just say you were let's just say $100,000 in student loan debt. We would use like $500 a month for that because we would be using like 0.5% of whatever your actual student loan debt was. But what's even more nice is that if you can get a letter from your loan servicer, if you will, as to what your actual payment is, fully amortized, we can use that amount now with FHA, and that's a beauty right now for FHA because we couldn't do that before, but now we can.
And is that letter different than the income-based repayment plan, or is that the income-based repayment plan you're talking about?
Yeah, that's the income-based repayment program, or sometimes people would just say IBR.
Okay.
But that's the same thing. The beauty of it is that if you have an IBR, you're going conventional, and you have an IBR, and if that IBR says that your payments are $0 a month, we can use that $0 a month as what you actually have to pay for your student loans, which again will help you out because you talk about $100,000 loan conventional, where we have to use 1% on conventional deals if it's not documented. Then you're talking about $1,000 that we have to add to your debt ratio, and that kicks a lot of people out of being able to afford a home.
Right. So what sellers can expect now is the fact that this conversation is being had with your clients, right? So that you're walking them through the different ways to acquire this property that's now on the market. So we talked a lot about FHA. We talked a little bit about conventional. Can you tell us put on your seller's hat? Can you tell us what the significant difference is between an FHA loan and a conventional loan? And the reason why I'm asking that is because as I look at the inventory and what's on the market, I am starting to see an influx of conventional and cash. And
I know.
It eliminates the FHA buyer from being able to bid on that particular property. Why do you think sellers are moving towards conventional versus FHA? Are there some myths that we need to dispel?
There are some myths, and I think it's more out of fear with the sellers because they've been told that, well, FHA is going to come in and they're going to require you to make all of these repairs, right? But let's keep in mind that most home buyers, well, they should be getting a home inspection as well. So these things that are called out by FHA are more than likely going to be called out by the home inspector as well.
Exactly.
So it's not like the buyer's not going to be aware of the problems that occur, that are with the house currently. So I would say don't be afraid of FHA. Make sure that you have your house in order because you don't want to buy something that's not up to par. So no one else wants to buy anything that's not up to par as well. So I would say, do not turn down FHA deals Here's another reason why people are afraid of FHA deals.
Okay, let's go there. Let's do it. This is a real chat. Let's talk about
it. The other thing is with when an FHA appraiser comes out to your property, they're going to do an appraisal. And let's say that appraisal comes in lower than the seller would like. We're not going to say the appraisal came in low because we're dealing with professionals and it can be subjective, but the appraisal is what it is, right? But on an FHA deal, that appraisal sticks with the property for 6 months because FHA creates a case, and that appraisal is going to have a case number assigned to it. And I don't care if that deal falls apart. The next person to buy the house, if they're an FHA borrower as well, they're not ordering a new appraisal. They're going to use that same appraisal for 6 months. Well, if that appraisal came in low, well, now you have a seller who is now feeling like, but I wanted to sell my house for what I wanted to sell it for. And you're not going to be able to do that unless you bring in a conventional deal where they're going to do a new appraisal. But mind you, that does not mean that the new conventional appraisal is going to come in higher. So typically the same people who appraise for FHA appraise for conventional as well. So just because a deal is going conventional does not mean that it's going to appraise higher. It really shouldn't factor in at all.
Thank you so much for clarifying that. You have a question, Krista?
Yes. So, well, the conventional or FHA, does it matter in the closing?
Does it matter at the closing?
No. Does it matter for closing as far as like the time? Is it faster?
No. Good question, Krista. No, it does not matter. And it does not matter. And, just to be funny here, the money is the same. At the end of the transaction, when we get a clear close, no one is asking questions about whether or not this was a FHA deal, a conventional deal, a VA deal. It doesn't matter.
You know what we're doing, Kristen? You know what we're doing?
All day, every day.
All day. All day, every day. We don't care if that is conventional or FHA. We got another question here. I'm going to post it, Kelvin. I think this question is for you. A great discussion. Thank you, Michael. He's also my realtor partner, buddy. We went to school together. How does active loans affect a client's DTI for FHA? Meaning the client has the student loan, but they're not yet required to start paying until a future date. That's actually a great question.
It is a great question. If you have a student loan that's not in repayment, it shouldn't really be on your credit report. But if it is, then you would have to get something from the loan servicer to give some type of idea of what your payment is going to be, your future payment. But in most cases, I've seen it hasn't really shown up yet. But if it should show up, that's the only way around it, because we have to use something. So we would need something from the loan servicer to state what the approximate payment would be.
And then I wanted to thank you for asking that question, Mike. That was a really good question. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the appraisal. What types of alternative options does the seller have if they are still wanting the buyer to pay the difference? Is there a method that they can use to make sure that the buyer that comes in still pays the difference from the appraisal and the actual price of the house? I'm asking this question, but I know it. But I just want you to talk a little bit about that.
Well, if you mean it, but for in some case where the appraisal came in low, but the buyer the seller still wants to sell it for that price. The only alternative would be that the buyer would have to come up with the difference between the shortfall between the appraisal and the purchase price. If the buyer is in a financial position, and they have been counseled to do so, which I wouldn't recommend that, but if they've been counseled to do so, then and they have the ability to do it, I've seen it happen, and I've seen it happen quite a bit during pandemic.
And that's what I was getting to. I feel like, thank you for answering that. I feel like we are going back into, we're almost into a similar situation where we are going to start seeing buyers who can afford it, if it makes sense for them, signing the appraisal gap addendum. That's the official name of that form. It's an appraisal gap addendum. And basically what that does is the buyer agrees to bridge the gap between the appraised amount and the amount that it's listed at, just to make sure that they can acquire that property. To Kelvin's point, I highly encourage people to do a lot of education around that, really understand what you're getting into. But an appraisal gap sellers is another way for you to still demand that that buyer pays the difference. And this is usually something that you have to notify us about when you are putting that listing on the market, because we need to be able to adequately advertise that appraisal gap addendum is something that you're requiring as we list this property, so that people understand 100% what they're getting into. So sellers, just really quickly, a couple of forms that you're going to have to fill out. You're going to have to fill out a real property disclosure, which talks about the property over the last 12 months. Have you lived on the property? And then there are 24 line items for you to complete, and that goes to the buyer so that the buyer is aware. Kelvin talked a little bit about lead-based paint, so there is going to be a lead-based paint disclosure, which talks about if you're aware of any lead-based paint in or around the property, and if you had to mitigate that, if you have reports. Again, that also goes to the buyer. There's going to be a radon disclosure. Contrary to popular belief, there has been radon found in some of these, in some of the land where some of these properties are being built. So very similar to lead-based paint disclosure, this disclosure is going to notify or disclose to the buyer if you had any problems with radon, and if you have, how did you address that? And you would have to present the disclosure. And then the last thing would be for the listing agent would be the exclusive listing agreement. And that just gives the real estate agent the exclusive right to sell that property. And that is going to have information about compensation, what's the price. If the property doesn't move within a certain amount of time, we'll already have that discussion up front as how we want to do a price correction to make sure that that property moves amongst everything else that's truly important. One of the things that is extremely important that a lot of people don't talk about on the exclusive listing agreement is the fair housing section. Because as a realtor and as a real estate agent, we are not able to discriminate because of anyone's religion, familial status, all of those classes that are protected. We must abide by those laws, and we have to make sure that you as the seller understand you too have to abide by those laws. You might want to see it handed down to a certain demographic, but that's not something that we can drive. We have to make sure that we are coming to the table and that other agents are coming to the table with ready, willing, and able buyers, despite what your preference is for someone that might want to acquire that property. And I don't really think that's talked about enough. Also compensation. I don't think that's talked about enough. So that's a really deep dive into what that compensation is going to look like as a result of putting this property on the market. And one of the things that I usually do for my sellers, because I'm big on seeing things in black and white, is I usually would pull in my title company partner. Shout out to Demetrius Cole of Near North Title. I usually reach out to Demetrius and I'll say, hey, Demetrius, here's what we're looking at. This is what the payoff balance is. Here are the extra numbers. Can you give us a seller's net sheet? I do not do those myself. I usually let the experts take care of that. But I do that up front so that the sellers can have a better gauge on, okay, if I have to help this buyer with closing cost credit, because sellers, we do still need your help. So sometimes that may result in a closing cost credit. That's to help that buyer get to that table. Yes, there are different down payment assistance programs, depending on how much someone makes, the area median income. If they fall too far above that, they may not necessarily qualify for down payment assistance. So yes, we might have a conversation about that, but I'm going to factor that in up front to your
Right.
seller's name, just so you know what you are expected to walk away with once that property closes. And I usually do a little variation. I may start at the listing price, and then I may do another variation and give you an example of what that looks like after a price reduction. Again, this is just because I like being extremely transparent about the numbers. I'm not afraid to talk the numbers. And I feel like you as a seller deserve to have a full understanding of what those numbers look like, but really what my role is as your agent. So those are just some, yeah.
Sorry, I mean to interject.
No,
Now, I have one for you and then two for Kelvin. So the first question, let's say I am not happy with my realtor, my real estate agent. And there is a contract on non-compete. How do I go, or is there a way to get out of that contract, out of said contract? And then my question to you, I know I'm just gonna put it out there.
Okay.
I was on TikTok, like a lot of us are. I don't know if you heard this or seen this TikTok. There is a TikTok that is going around. It says something along the lines of, if I qualify for an FHA loan and the person that I'm purchasing their home, they have an FHA loan as well,
Mm-hmm.
I can assume their loan rate. Is that correct? And then the second thing is,
well, that's well, you on question 3 right now, but go ahead.
Okay, the third question, right? I was like, wait, the third question, but the third question is, because you brought this up with closing costs.
Yeah.
Is there a way for a potential buyer to simply say, hey, I don't really necessarily want you to come down on the price? Are you able to give me blah, blah, blah in closing so that I can buy down my interest rate?
Sure. Yeah, I can answer those if you want.
So Kelvin will take the last 2 questions. I'll take the first question. Mm-hmm. So the great questions, by the way. So question about if a seller and their broker, their real estate agent, their designated real estate agent, if they're not seeing eye to eye, usually the first thing that I try to do, because I've actually had that happen to me personally, I'll just be transparent. You go into these relationships not knowing what emotions are going to be pulled out from sellers sometimes. And sometimes those situations can get a little bit out of hand. And I had a situation a couple of years ago, actually during COVID. I was selling a property in Chatham, and the sellers were under the impression that I wasn't doing what I was supposed to. So we had a conversation, right? Because I'm like, give me feedback. Is there something you're not seeing? Is there something you don't like? I'm usually extremely communicative during my process. Kelvin will tell you I over communicate a lot of times, just because that's a little bit of my OCD that's paid off in the real estate industry. So I'll follow up like 85 kabillion times. But there was just some miscommunication that was had. And in that instance, usually the first step that we try to help alleviate that, right? We try to help mediate that. But if it doesn't work, I usually just reach out to my managing broker, because every agency has a designated managing broker, and the designated managing broker is usually that person that can step in, right? And just try to figure out from a neutral side, like, okay, here's your perspective. Okay, here's the seller's perspective. And because of that, we were actually able to mitigate the problem. And the bottom line was really that they just felt like the house wasn't selling fast enough. And I'm like, well, I can't grab people by the neck and bring them to the open house. You know, I do marketing, I do advertising, I'm on social media, I'm sharing these properties, I'm doing open houses. A lot of times sellers don't necessarily want to believe that it's the price. And this was a situation where I had already told this seller, this price is really not what is reflective in this market right now in Chatham. So we're going to have to try some things out. They did not necessarily want to, after a few weeks, adjust the price. And so they started thinking about different things and started pulling out different things like, oh, you're only doing 1 open house a week. It's how are these listings being sent over? And I'm like, listen, this is on the MLS. This is going to over 20,000 real estate agents here in the Midwest, plus 20,000 plus. So trust me, if there's a buyer that feels like this home is priced adequately, which is not, they're going to put an offer in. They're going to make an appointment. buyers do not have time, and I'm so glad you mentioned this, Kristen. Buyers don't have time to just come out and look at houses just because.
Right.
Again, buyers are more savvy. They're working. They have children. They have lives. They don't just have time to just be riding around, coming to open houses or pulling their real estate agents to the side, going to these properties that are not priced adequately. Buyers don't have time for that. They have to move. Their leases are getting ready to be up. They're trying to figure out what school districts their children are getting ready to go to. I'm noticing multi-generational buyers where now they have to consider mom and dad, because now the children are going to start taking care of the grandparents because the grandparents can't stay in their home. Like, buyers have a lot to deal with right now. So we have to make sure that we are very, very, oh, Kelvin, you got a question. I'll post it in a minute. We have to make sure that, we price these properties adequately. People don't have time to just go around from house to house. Time is of the essence for a lot of people. And life is lifing. While all of this is happening, life is lifing on the seller side, on the buyer side. So we just have to make sure that we have those conversations with our sellers up front so that expectations are clear. But yes, to answer your question, Kristen, that happens. It happens all the time. The next step, if they're not necessarily able to mediate that with the current designated agent, the managing broker, with the seller's permission, can then assign another agent under that same agency. So that's another alternative, because the bottom line is we still want to make sure that their property is sold and that seller gets the service that he or she feels like they deserve.
Gotcha.
Okay, right. Kelvin, you can answer your 2 questions. I'm sorry. Did you forget them?
I forgot. No, I remember one. I remember one of them. It's okay. I know that one of them.
Answer the one that you remember, and I'll ask it again.
Okay. All right. So I think Kristen was asking, basically, could funds from the seller concessions be used to possibly do maybe a buy down or something that was lower? Yeah, buy down points. Both are possible. There's a program that's called, we have buy downs like a 3-2-1 buy down or a 2-1 buy down. And all that really means is that for the first, if you look at 3-2-1, that means the first year, this is a 3-year term. The first year, the rate is 3% lower than what the actual note rate is.
Yep.
The second year is 2% lower. The third year is 1% lower. And then after that, it goes back to the initial rate, the real rate that started at year 3. So that's a buy down. Buy downs are good. If we're thinking that rates are going to come down, so it'll give a person time to have a lower rate for a time. But what I try to tell realtors, the realtors that I work with is, hey, look, just see if you can get the listing agent to take a seller concession. And I'll figure out what's best from that point, because there's so many ways to handle that. It doesn't always have to be used, like you said, doesn't have to be used to help with closing costs, but it can be used to help to qualify the borrower. I may be able to do a permanent buy down where this isn't going to change based upon what year it is. And on a permanent buy down, I can then use that rate to qualify the person. Whereas on a 3-2-1 buy down, I still have to use the full rate, the real rate. I have to use that one to qualify the person. So there's a way of doing it. And I'll just say this real quick. It looks like we have a question regarding down payment assistance. Does that decrease the client's loan amount? And in some cases, increase their interest rate? I have a couple of clients with. Okay, so now down payment assistance does not decrease the client's loan amount unless we run into a situation where there's so much money at the table that we do what's called a principal buy down. But in general, it does not. The down payment assistance is used to pay the down payment. And let's just say with FHA, the down payment is 3.5%. Okay. And let's just say that the amount of the down payment for FHA is more than the actual down payment assistance you're going to get. Well, the down payment assistance that you will get will be applied to the down payment assistance that you need. And anything that is short, my borrower still has to come up with that amount. Okay. So no, it does not decrease. Typically, it does not decrease the the client's loan amount unless there's an overage and we have to do a principal buy down. And in some cases, increase their interest rate. Absolutely not. It does not. I hear people saying that, but to be really perfectly honest with you, I'll just give you an idea. Like today, I think IDA, that's Illinois Housing Development Authority. I think that their rate on an FHA deal today, I want to say that it was 6.5%. Well, I challenge anyone to go and get a regular loan at 6.5%. It's not without a buy down, not without a buy down. But you might get close to that if you shop, if you shop a lot, but no, your interest rate is not going to increase because of down payment assistance. And what I've noticed is that with IDA is that when rates start coming down outside of the down payment assistance, it comes down on IDA as well. So they're always going to be competitive. So no,
Great
the
question.
answer to that.
Great question.
Yeah. There's some other things that might be an issue with down payment assistance, but we'll cover that at a later date. But for our borrower standpoint, no, it's not a problem.
Awesome. So you all, we're going to start wrapping up. We promise not to take our audience away for more than an hour. Absolutely wonderful discussion. I feel like this is really what's happening right now in the market, right? So this is the reality of real estate. And I just think that sellers, we want to make sure that you have adequate information and knowledge before you make the decision to move forward. Thank you, Bill. Bill Bates, my exit peer, and he's also an attorney. Thank you for hanging out with us today. We appreciate you. But yeah, I just think that it's important. Thank you, Mike. Thank you. We appreciate you as well. Thank you for joining. Great questions. And if you have any clients, Mike, that Kelvin might be able to assist, you guys you might want to connect. We'll share everybody's contact information momentarily. You all may want to connect on a couple of things. So thank you so much for joining. But yeah, I just feel like this is like the reality of real estate, right? It's one of those seasons where now we're starting to see more buyers. The rates hasn't scared off as many people as we thought it would. And people that were that took a break on buying have now re-entered the market in a lot of our communities, because to your point, they're seeing that, oh, there are different options. I can do a rate buy down. I don't necessarily have to ask for closing costs. I can say, hey, buy my rate down for a little bit, give me some time. The other thing is, a lot of times at the beginning of the year, most people who are working get raises. So that buy down can kind of help them as they navigate that new raise increase. So that 3-2-1 or even that 2-1 buy down could be a great option for buyers. So sellers, we have all types of creative ways to help bring the buyers to the table. I think the biggest thing is just things that we talked about, right? I talked about making sure that it's priced right, making sure that you're prepared, make sure you have all of your paperwork in tow. If you have appliances that have warranties, make sure that you keep all of that stuff, right? If you've done any repairs and we didn't talk about this, but I'll talk about it quickly. If you've done any repairs, roofing repairs to your furnace, right? Electrical repairs, keep those receipts, keep those records, because that might be called out during that time when that buyer is interested in moving forward. Make sure that you put all of that in one area so that when you're ready to put that property on the market, you have a folder with all of your dedicated repairs, any warranties. Because the biggest thing that most buyers are afraid of is maintenance. They're afraid of something breaking down. They're afraid of the roof. They're afraid if the electrical is right. So if you've done any work, make sure that you're keeping track of the work that you're doing. And if you're thinking of doing some work before you put it on the market, make sure that it's a licensed and bonded contractor who can provide you with not only a receipt, but a warranty. So that way you can give that buyer confidence when they come into that property. Krissy, did you want to say anything in closing?
Yes, there are two things. One, for all sellers, there is, what is it called? American Home Shield. That is a property warranty that can assist. It's like $100, $125. I highly recommend. I'm just saying, get it. I have it. Our furnace broke down.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Are you there? Did we lose you?
We lost her audio.
Oh, okay. She might have
Now
gotten the phone. She said 1 minute. So
okay.
Kelvin, while she's getting her audio back, you want to say anything to our sellers in closing?
Most definitely. Two things. One, please, sellers, do not be afraid of doing concessions, meaning to give the borrower some money towards closing. Those things can be worked out with your realtor. They're going to give you a bottom line sheet,
Yes.
right? And so you really should be thinking about, what will I sell this house for if I'm giving a 3 to 6% sell, a buyer concession? Because honestly, what I found out is the buyer concessions makes these loans go a lot smoother. There's a lot of cost involved with buying a home, and it's not just the down payment. There's settlement costs and things like that. But given the buyer concessions allows me to do my job easier. I might be able to buy the rate down or do some things to make qualification a lot easier for them. And as long as your bottom line doesn't change, don't worry about the concessions. Just worry about your bottom line. Okay, so that would be my one thing. And then the other thing, don't be afraid of two.
I thought you said that was going to be your one thing.
But this is important. This is important. It's going to be quick.
I'm just joking. Go ahead.
Don't be afraid. If you see a pre-approval with down payment assistance on it, they do not take any longer to close than any other loan.
Thank you.
So if you see something that says DPA on it, down payment assistance, don't worry about it. We got that. We close 1 million of those. Okay. So that's what I say. And then lastly, don't be afraid of FHA loans. It's going to bring a larger pool of borrowers to your door. So don't be afraid of FHA loans, because a lot of times, especially if it's a 2-unit, people don't have the conventional wants 6 months reserves, for the borrower to have. Okay, if that's $3,000 a month, then times 6, that's $18,000 additional that they need to show. Common sense says that you're going to lose some borrowers. So don't be afraid of FHA. Make your necessary repairs and market your house to anyone, FHA, conventional, whatever. If we had enough time, I would tell you don't even be worried about if there is some repairs, because if you can't negotiate the repairs together, we can do a renovation loan. So
that's the next. That's gonna be the next.
That's the next. That's the whole next one. But it's a whole lot we can do. But just listen to your realtors and don't be afraid.
I love it. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Thank you, Kelvin. Krissy, you good on your audio? Mic check 1 2 1 2. What you want to do? Mic check. Nope, we still can't hear you. We still can't hear you, Queen.
We see her perfectly, though.
I see you, but we can't hear you.
It must be something on in the system.
Let me see if I can
reboot it.
I don't even think so. I can't even do anything to help her with her audio. I don't know what happened, love.
Well, can you say what you think Krissy might say?
What I put on the screen, reach out to her for a consultation. But no, she wanted to say something else. We still can't hear you. Huh? I can't hear you. We can't hear you at all. But I do have your email down here.
Yeah, they may have to book a consultation.
Yeah, book your consultation. She's really good at what she does. A lot of the things that she talks about are very, very reasonable. Don't be afraid to spend a little bit of money to get that property sold. You can't have everything, right? You can't have the full price offer or the over asking price offer, and you still have things that you need to do inside of the home, and you might not necessarily deserve that full price offer. So she said, do I see her chat? Oh, hold on, let me double check.
Oh.
Mention InHood. InHood Saturday, they help with renovation. I don't know what that is. I feel like we playing the game. Krissy, it's already 6:59. Krissy, we getting ready to leave. Look, you can come back and put a comment on the video. But no, thank you all Thank you both for stopping by. If you have questions and you want to have Kristen come to the property and just do a consultation to give you an idea of what you can do, how you can get more, you know, how you can put that home on the market more effectively.
Yes.
Please let us know. Mike, I put up Kelvin's phone number for you so you can reach out to Kelvin. I will put it up once again if I can find it, and I can. There we go. That is Kelvin Waits' number. I know that this was a seller's chat, but we might also have buyers on here, so feel free to reach out to Kelvin if you are coming to the market. But sellers, we really want to make sure that we provide you with some clear-cut tips and some tools to help you get prepared. If you're a seller and you're ready for a personal consultation, it does not cost anything for me to come to the house and give you an evaluation of the home, walk through the home along with Kristen to tell you exactly what you might want to do. And you can also text me if you'd like me to do a quick CMA for you. Just text Miss Cass to 85377. Kristen, try to say something. Let me see before we wrap up. I don't know what happened to you, boo.
Oh.
We still can't hear you.
It's something. It must be in the.
I feel like she got a phone call or something, or a text. She got a phone call. Yeah, whatever it was, it totally knocked her audio out. Who was that called you and messed up our good time? Send me their information. But again, here's Kristen's information. I highly encourage, if you're a seller coming to the market, please reach out to her, reach out to us. We are the team to get it done. And as you can see, we already have the lender thinking about the buyer that might be adequate for your property, thinking about, you know, what are some tips and tools that we can help to get that buyer to the closing table so we can get your house sold.
Yes.
All right. Thank you all so much for joining.
Thank
Let's
you.
Get It Sold, a virtual seller chat with Miss Cass, Kelvin, and Krissy. Thank you both for joining. If there's anybody out there, again, that is thinking about putting their property on the market, feel free to text Miss Cass to 85377. That is MSCASS to 85377. And if by any stroke of luck that we might have a few buyers that are on here, you know, hey, boo, feel free to text me too. I'm an equal opportunity realtor. How you doing? Thank you all so much for joining. Thank you to the comments and the questions from our audience. And yeah, we are. Oh, they said she might have to log off then log back in.
I think she tried that.
Ain't nobody got time for that, Shimon. We out of here. We peace out. We out of here. Thank you all. Have a good night. You're welcome, Miss Edna. I hope that this was helpful for you.
Hey, Emma.
I know, right? We hope that this was helpful for you all, and we hope to come back with another virtual session. Give us some feedback. Inbox me, DM me. Let me know what you thought, if I can do anything different. Again, this is your girl, Miss Cass, Exit Strategy Realty, your neighborhood realtor, investor, and educator. Heavy on the education, honey, because there's a lot of shenanigans out here.
Right.
Connecting you to the community through real estate. Have a great night, everybody. Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.